Hello everyone, and today I'm going to be going over some basic pawn endings. Um, okay, and these usually take place in the endgame phase of like a normal chess game. So as a review, we have opening, middle game, and then endgame. So these are usually not usually, these are in the endgame, pretty much defined to be there's so little pieces left. Okay, so this first position is actually a draw. So this is a case of you don't want to move your pawn like first, like farther up the board, and instead you want to have your king in front of the pawn until the very end when the king is when the king is on the on e6 or the sixth rank. So what happens if you push the pawn too far is that it leads to a draw, like this scenario. So if it's black's turn to move, all black has to do is go back like this, and then after black moves back, then we could look at, there's really like three moves that are kind of feasible here. Everything else is just will lead to a repeat of like the last position. Like say for example, if black goes here and then white decides to go here, then black will just go up here and white will go back up here to defend the pawn. If white does this, then black will go back. And this is kind of like this situation. So anyways, why don't we just look at that. So by symmetry, if white goes here, it's the same thing as if white goes here. Just look at the board, it's like half. Anyways, it's black's turn to move. Black goes back like this. Now let's say white goes here. Then after this, black will take the opposition, which I discussed in a previous video. If you didn't watch that, or if you haven't watched any video on, or any have not read about opposition yet, it's when the king, the most simple opposition, which is like direct opposition, is when the king and your opponent's king have one space between each other. And then that's a situation of opposition. The person whose move it is set to not have the opposition, so it's the opposite. So in this case, after black moves here, black has the opposition because white's turn to move. Okay. So now white has two realistic options. White can either move up like this or move to the side like this. If white moves to the side like this, then black will go here, and it'll be a repeat. We saw this move a couple minutes ago. If you want, you can rewind and check for yourself. And then so this is going back to the position, and now if white goes up like this, then after this check, black would obviously not want to let white promote. Black would go here, and then this leads to a draw because the only place that white can go and still defend their pawn is here, and then after this the king can't move anymore. Okay, now we have this next position. This is like much of the same thing, except it's white's turn to move. Key difference here. Now if it's white's turn to move, same thing basically happens. So white goes here, white goes back, and then same thing. So lesson is don't move your pawn up too early, move your king first, and then try to promote your pawn. And next position is this one. This is pretty easy. There's really like one clearly best move here, so you can pause the video and try to find it out yourself. But anyways, so I've said like before that the way you know if a pawn promotes is that you draw like a square to, like, you draw a line to this, like to the end square, and then you make like a smaller square out of that on the chessboard. So like this. If the king is in this square, like your opponent's king, then they'll be able to catch it. So if white went like this, for example, black was able to catch it. So black was in this square. Now if black's king started here, and white went like this, quickly, white will successfully be able to promote. However, there's one key trick here, and that is that white's pawn can actually move two spaces since it's its first move, right? So basically, you can think of the pawn starting out over here instead of like back there, because it's the same thing. So they can move both on one space, and now you can, if you draw the square, and obviously you need to do this in like your head or something like that. But now, as you can see, black's king is clearly not in the square, and white will be able to promote. So it's white's turn to move. Oops. White will easily be able to promote and then win the game. And it's the same thing if pawn's over here, because after this, much of the same thing. And it doesn't matter if like black tries to go like crisscross to the square or just straight, it will not be able to catch it. Okay. So in this position, the best move here would be I would recommend to pause for a little bit and think about it, but the best move here would be to move the king up here. So this might seem like a little bit of a weird move, but here's why. So if you try to say, okay, the king is on the 6th rank, and I can it doesn't matter what I do, I can easily move the pawn. So if you move the pawn up like this, the king will be able to go like this. Now, if you move the pawn up like this, then you're in trouble. Like this is a draw, right? Black takes the opposition. So if you go like this, white will be able to win. Instead, if you just go back to the original position, okay, if you go up to the original position and just move the king up like this, then you can just, now there's no way for black to enter this side and block the pawn. So now after this, black will just, I don't know, do something like this, then you can easily push it up, and there's nothing that black can really do. So that kind of idea is called like blocking out the king, like shouldering the king out, and it's like really useful for endgames. So these 4 positions are the only ones that I'm going to look at for today. I'll make another video later on some other endgame positions and like the key ideas in them, and just explaining what each side, or I guess the side with the advantage should do, or maybe even if the side with the disadvantage should do to defend and come out with a draw. So once again, thank you everyone for listening.